Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a big one, the pervasive influence of social media on our lives.
Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it?
It really is, and we've got a fascinating foundation for this exploration, drawing from a recent in-depth conversation. We heard from a student in information science and also a content creator.
Right, so you get these two really interesting angles, the sort of academic side and the practical lived experience.
Exactly. And our goal isn't just to describe what social media is, but to really get under the hood, understand how it impacts us, what drives our engagement.
And maybe how we can navigate it a bit more thoughtfully.
Precisely. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding the key dynamics without getting bogged down in endless scrolling yourself.
Exactly. Our mission here is to pull out those crucial insights about social media's real effects. It has this subtle power, doesn't it, to shape our attention.
Definitely.
And we look at the diverse reasons we use it, and importantly, some practical ways to maybe build a healthier relationship with these platforms.
We want to shed some light on this, make it clear and engaging and hopefully really relevant to you listening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get started with those first experiences. It's quite striking how differently our two contributors first encountered social media.
It really is. One person recalled their first time on Facebook.
Yeah.
It was almost entirely down to that classic middle school thing, peer pressure.
Yeah, needing to be tagged in photos.
Exactly that. Being part of those online groups, it highlights that core thing, doesn't it? Our need for belonging, which these platforms tap into so cleverly. Features like tagging, public connections.
Absolutely. It's that fear of missing out. They mentioned feeling let vo, which I learned is Vietnamese for feeling, left out or inferior.
Wow, yeah. That's a powerful motivator, especially when you're young.
Totally. And then the other experience was completely different, much more intentional. A parent who's a teacher actually set up the Facebook account for their child.
Which really underscores how varied those starting points can be. And you wonder how that might shape things later on.
Right. One driven by social pressure, the other more controlled, familial. It probably influences how you see these platforms long term.
It likely does, even subtly.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit. What about the actual content that stuck with them amidst all the noise?
Yeah, this was interesting. What actually cuts through, for one person, it was a New York Times post on Instagram.
Okay.
But not just any post. It was this really impactful humanitarian photography from an Afghan highway hotel helping migrants. Really powerful images capturing human stories.
That says a lot, doesn't it, about visual storytelling? Especially using it to highlight big global issues, create empathy. It shows social media can be a channel for important journalism.
For sure. It can connect people across huge distances through shared emotion. Then completely different vibe. The other memorable piece was a LinkedIn post.
LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah, sounds less emotional, right? But it was super practical, all about CV creation. And it just hit home because they and their friends were right in that phase, figuring out the job market.
And that shows the other kind of impact, right? Immediate, tangible value. Professional development, navigating life stages. You look for reliable info, shared experiences.
Totally. So these examples lead us nicely into the why, What are the underlying reasons people are even on these platforms?
The motivations seem pretty broad, as you'd expect. There's definitely entertainment, just that passive scrolling we all do sometimes.
Guilty.
But it's more than that. People actively follow specific interests. Creators might be showcasing products or their art.
And connecting with friends, especially international ones. That United World College Alumni Network example was great.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
It shows how social media sustains these global communities built on shared experience. And we also heard about using Pinterest for artistic inspiration.
Right, or actively looking for opportunities, internships, extracurriculars, things like that.
It really highlights the utility beyond just leisure.
But let's be real, our intentions don't always match our habits, do they?
No. Tell me about it.
There was that relatable moment, admitting to spending tons of time on Instagram, even while wanting to read more on the New York Times app.
Oh, that gap is so familiar. The aspirational self versus the screen time reality.
Exactly. And this ties into how our brains react, right? That dopamine rush discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with short form stuff like TikTok. Dopamine, that pleasure chemical in the brain. These platforms deliver novelty constantly, quick hits.
Triggering the reward pathways.
Right. And unlike reading a book or something sustained, this rapid fire delivery makes you crave more immediately. It can lead to really habitual, almost mindless scrolling.
And that phrase dopamine overload, I felt that mental fatigue, feeling kind of empty after scrolling for ages, even if the content was okay.
It's a very real thing. Your brain just gets saturated with these tiny rewards.
It's a crucial point. The design often prioritizes that quick hit over deeper engagement.
It does. But it was encouraging that people also talked about trying to regain control
Yeah, like consciously deciding to only look at accounts they followed on Instagram.
or actively using YouTube search instead of just letting the algorithm feed you endlessly.
It's that shift from passive consumption to something more intentional.
And, understandably, content creators use it more, not just for fun, but for learning, getting inspired.
The line between leisure and work gets pretty blurry there.
It really does. Which brings us to a critical point. The actual design of these platforms.
Exactly. It was brought up that fundamentally they're designed to maximize our time and attention. That's the business model, right?
Pretty much. And the example of Instagram changing its algorithm back in 2016, that wasn't random.
Going from chronological to algorithmic?
Yeah, that was a deliberate move to boost engagement. The algorithm figures out what it thinks will keep you hooked based on your past clicks, what similar people like.
So the feed becomes super personalized.
Highly personalized, designed to keep you scrolling, which can also create filter bubbles, where you don't see different viewpoints.
Yes, it's not just about our willpower. The platforms themselves are engineered to hold our attention.
Precisely. Yeah. So what happens when people actually try to step away, take a break?
The stories about breaks were really telling. One content creator took a whole month off.
A month? Wow.
Yeah, they were abroad, going through a tough time, and just didn't want to fake positivity online. They wanted to be authentic.
That takes guts.
Yeah.
Resisting that pressure to always present the perfect online self, taking time to just be with your real experience.
It shows real self-awareness. Then there was another story, quite powerful.
Oh.
Someone woke up late, realized they'd spent hours just consuming content, almost mindlessly.
Been there.
And they saw the reflection in the phone screen and had this moment of clarity, seeing how the targeted content was shaping their thoughts, their desires, feeling like they'd lost some control.
That's intense.
Yeah, and it led them to actually delete the social media apps off their phone. Just gone.
Wow. That's a big step, but I can see why. It's like hitting reset to get some perspective back, underscores how deep the influence can run.
For sure. Okay, let's shift to some of the fears, the anxieties tied to social media.
Right. The fear of being canceled came up. That whole James Charles Toddy Westbrook beauty YouTube drama was used as an example.
Oh yeah, that blew up.
Massively. And it just shows how fast and, frankly, vicious online backlash can be. Public opinion shifts on a dime based on info that might be incomplete or way out of context.
It highlights the volatility, the high stakes, especially if you have any kind of public profile.
And imagine being young, growing up with that pressure constantly hanging over you.
It must be immense, navigating identity formation while under that kind of potential scrutiny.
Absolutely. And then there's the other huge fear, fake news, misinformation.
Yeah.
And the critical need for media literacy.
The examples were chilling. That deep fake video of Obama.
So unsettling. Shows how easily convincing fakes can be made now. Telling truth from fiction is getting harder.
And the COVID misinformation in Vietnam, real-world consequences when people can't sort credible sources from noise.
It really puts the onus on all of us, doesn't it? To be critical consumers of information, seek out trustworthy sources. Misinformation spreads like wildfire on these platforms.
It's a massive challenge. So thinking about these connections, how does social media weave into other parts of life?
Well, the link to mental health and cyberbullying is a big one. That anonymity online. It can definitely embolden some pretty nasty behavior.
Yeah, making bullying and harassment worse sometimes.
And the discussion also touched on that gap between online identity and our real selves, being the class clown online, but maybe more introspective offline.
That curated persona, we all do it to some extent, I guess.
We do. And the impact on self-esteem. That's huge, too. Seeing all these perfect curated images, especially on Instagram.
Yeah, and maybe getting negative comments about your appearance.
It can really create feelings of inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
And as was pointed out, the beauty industry can then capitalize on those insecurities.
It's a cycle?
But it's not all bad. There was also that story about genuine affirmation from someone online actually helping self-perception.
Right, so positive connection can happen and make a difference.
Definitely. But then there was also that cautionary tale. An early negative experience on a language exchange site.
Oh yeah, encountering inappropriate stuff because the platform was too open, maybe?
Exactly. And not having parental guidance or a safe space to talk about it,
Right.
it highlights the vulnerability, especially for kids navigating this without enough support.
Which really brings it back to parents, caregivers,
Hmm.
fostering open communication, letting kids know it's okay to talk about bad experiences or mistakes.
Crucial. You need guidance, education, understanding to navigate this intelligently. So, with all this complexity, how do we actually make social media a useful tool, not just something that happens to us?
Well, self-awareness seems key, right? Knowing your own identity, your values, your goals. That acts as a buffer against just getting swept away by trends.
Absolutely. And tied to that is recognizing that social media is often a highlight reel. It's not the whole story.
Constantly reminding yourself not to compare your behind the scenes to someone else's curated front page.
Exactly. Avoiding that unnecessary pressure.
That moment when the screen time stats were shared, that felt like a real mirror moment.
Didn't it? Seeing the actual hours on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok,
Hmm.
even things like the camera app or Google Maps, and the number of phone pickups.
It forces you to confront where your attention is really going, makes you think.
And comparing weekly YouTube use, which was mostly music, to the daily breakdown of other apps. It shows how we use different platforms differently, filling different slots in our day.
The reflection on those personal insights was valuable in itself, just taking stock.
Hmm.
So, as we start to wrap this up, what are the main takeaways for you? What really stands out?
Okay, I think firstly, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
Social media is powerful, huge benefits, but also very real risks.
Right.
Secondly, remembering that design isn't neutral. It's built to shape our engagement, grab our attention.
It influences us subtly or not so subtly.
Exactly. And finally, cultivating mindful engagement, being aware of why we're scrolling, what we're consuming, how it's affecting us. That's essential for navigating this whole thing healthily.
And for you listening, we really hope this deep dive has given you some useful knowledge, maybe some context, perhaps a few aha moments.
Helping you approach social media with a bit more awareness, more intention, maybe feeling more in control.
Which leads to a final thought for you to mull over.
Yeah, reflecting on everything we've talked about, the dopamine, online identity, the flood of information. What's one small, concrete change you could actually make in your own social media habits?
Something realistic.
Just one small step towards fostering a more balanced, beneficial relationship with these platforms. It's a starting point, right? For taking back a bit more conscious control in our very digital lives.